Alright, we've got a package. What happens? Well, first up, this would probably be one of the more exciting things. Urusei Yatsura. This is collection 1 on Blu-ray. So it's nice that chunks of this are coming out. I say chunks. So like, I think for the TV series, only the old, I forget the name of the people that released it. So only that existed, and the movies, they've been being re-released on DVD Blu-ray by, Discotheque, I think that says Discotheque. Well, anyways, the point is, you know, I think it's only been the old stuff. And as a series, I kind of found it to be enjoyable to watch. And I don't mean like back when it was airing. I mean like me and my brother like a decade ago. Whoa. So, you know, knowing that it's kind of coming out in a much more collectible way is kind of nice. I spent a lot of money, like $1,000 or something for all the DVDs just to get them all. There was a lot of the original series, and I don't know, it's just nice to have it. Saint Tail is also kind of nice and nostalgic. So the interesting thing about this, I mean, looking at the back here, like I expect this to be Japanese with English subtitles only, I think. Yeah, it says Japanese with English subtitles only. Saint Tail, I think it was going to be an 8 DVD release, but only the first 5 DVDs were released, and those were sub and dub. But then the last 3 DVDs were released in one big thing, subtitled only. And I'm not sure if it's necessarily the best series, but I don't know. It's just something I find nostalgic about the design. So let's see what the back here says. Yeah, so audio, English, episodes 1 through 15. Japanese, 1 through 43. Which does not sound like that 5-disc versus 8-disc thing I was talking about. But, yeah, you can see right there it says, you know, this one is actually only, it's the same as the old English dubbed DVD release. Oh, nice. Different underneath the slip cover. But I guess it's kind of nice. I think that means this is a bit of a... I mean, this says it's a complete collection. It doesn't even say. So that pretty much means it's the complete. And... means we have that going for it. So that's highly appreciable as well, I think. Next up we have Sonic X. And I don't think I've gotten this on Blu-ray before. This is a standard edition. I think this one matters. Like the original Sonic X, I think was a 4Kids release. And if you're not aware, 4Kids is just notorious on how badly they've edited stuff. So there's a kind of a question I have in my mind what to expect from that, which I can't read through the camera. Because it's just said Japanese and Japanese. All 78 episodes in Japanese with subtitles for the first time. So, there you go. We've got Sonic X. And I do wish I'd watched it. It's... You know, I've never been a big Sonic person, but, you know, I kind of appreciated some of the stuff. And this does seem to be centered closely to the Sonic Adventure stuff, which is closer to when I played. I mostly only ever played Sonic Adventure 2, specifically Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. But, you know, it's kind of... As a series, I almost feel like it would be tailored to nostalgic from that time, although I do believe it's more than just like Sonic Adventure 2 Battle specific content. Anyways, the King of Braves GaoGaiGar Final. GaoGaiGar. this isn't the series proper. There's King of the Braves returns. Yeah, that's Japanese with English subtitles only. I'm trying to remember if the series was dubbed or not. Or even if it was or wasn't, whether or not I watched it. Well, you know. Final, so this is one disc. Okay, there's really no artwork behind that. Not that I'm likely to watch this simply because I'm not sure how well I remember GaoGaiGar enough to, just pick it back up. But here's this week's anime Blu-ray collection update. Alright, let's see. I think it's mostly a list of everything I talked about last week, just kind of the updates on everything. So, he's your hero. After being rejected, I shaved and took in a high school runway. I do believe I last watched episode 8. It was kind of hard to churn out episodes 9 through the end, mostly because I guess the subject matters were getting kind of heavy, and I felt like I wanted more of a breather than I was getting from it, and I had other goals that I just aimed for. So ultimately, I did manage to just finish the last episode, which I think was episode 12. Unless it was episode 13, future, whatever it's called. And so, what do I think about everything I saw at the very end there? The last third of it. Again, it's pretty heavy material, where it's starting to deal with the real meat of what happened, maybe even revealing kind of the nature of all this stuff. And I do kind of want to crush that mother's jaw in and skin her alive. She's a very detestable person, and if I were to say what it is, I feel like she's kind of a hypocritical animal, like kind of trying to pretend like she's an adult, but not really treating other people around her like an adult. Like, whatever difficult things she's gone through, she's making other people miserable and using her own adult status, I guess, to kind of make it messed up. Without going too much further into the exact details of everything that went on, it was pretty heavy, but overall, it was a very satisfactory end to how it all went. But I could tell, a lot of people really did despise her. That's the point. And I'm not sure I necessarily agree with the way that it was handled, but it felt like it was very effective and touching and the sort of thing, and we get there. If there's anything wrong with it, it's just like, never underestimate a bad person's stubborn unwillingness to stop being bad, I guess. Mostly because they don't see themselves as being bad in the first place. So, unlike that stupid Ant-Man quote, just stop being a dick. Well, no, they don't think they're a dick usually. So, that's, this show is infinitely more thoughtful and mature than Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I guess just tells you how far that's kind of sunk. But, for this show, overall, it was very nice. The very, very, very ending, maybe about right. I guess if there's any issue I have with it, it's that I almost wonder if it's, this is what needs to happen, or if it was more, this is what the people who enjoyed watching the show would want to see happen to a certain degree. But there's a lot of characters who said some really neat, thought-provoking, and kind of heartwarming stuff in there. So overall, I'd say it was a pretty good series. I'm glad I fired up and watched it. Now, can I remember the name of who suggested it to me? Names escape me. Sorry about that. My Hero Academia, Season 6. So I've watched the 4 final episodes of Season 6. And it maybe was okay. I could definitely understand people had watched all of it and they feel like it had lost its way. Some of it is that something I've said over and over again about something that makes My Hero Academia great is that, you know, even though it has a lot of the standard shonen tropes of, you know, spending a lot of time and energy with other people and maybe even some side stories, they all still feel about our main character. But some of what they talked about almost makes it feel like they're shifting it a little bit, which may be realistic or maybe a bit of a cop-out. Because, like I said, one of the interesting things about Season 6 here is it's kind of explored it jumping off, the main character having to hop off the rails that the show put them on, but they're very precarious rails because, again, you can't have somebody who's a hero if they're, you know, taught, oh, yes, here's how to be the hero. Oh, you got an A+ in class. You know, at that point, you're not discovering new ground, which is kind of the point of being a hero to a certain degree. You're just, you know, being told to explore where you're told to explore and doing well, which can be nice, but it's not a hero story. You know, the hero story is really about somebody who pioneers ahead of people. Like, if I think of, like, Princess Nausicaa as a hero, for example, she's kind of a hero in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, just because, again, she's pioneering this different way of thinking and rising above and beyond. I guess I'm just hesitant to say what I want to say because I appreciate the movie and I don't want to spoil it too much by saying stuff. But I think at the end of that movie, you can kind of feel like, yeah, she feels heroic. And she comes to mind because she's just been non-idle, an inspirational person from fictional media throughout most of my life. But yeah, so Season 6, I thought it was giving hints that maybe this could be the end of the season, which would feel a little rushed, so I'm glad it wasn't. There's a Season 7, and it may be in an okay place. We just kind of have to see what happens here. Because beyond that, some really touching emotional elements did happen here. Things that are just like, well, I guess I don't want to say too much, but I would say that, you know, it depends on how what Season 7 does. I think the show has put itself in a precarious position and hasn't pulled it out of it, such that, you know, again, it still ultimately comes down to how does this all end? And if Season 7 properly ends things, then maybe what happened here in Season 6 is fine. Because normally when you're telling like a story, like there's different flows and ebbs and stuff, and I think there's a 4-part story structure, which is kind of like part 1 an introduction, part 2 big adventure, part 3 the lowest point of the hero's journey, and part 4 the finale. And this season could very easily be a part 3. Now granted, this is across 7 seasons, so it's not parted specifically like that, but in terms of the overall story, if, you know, that part 2 is just a bit longer, or the part 1, part 2 are just kind of mixed together a bit longer, to a 3-part story maybe, it's still important for you to have a good low point in the series, and in that regard, Season 6 did a good job of doing that. And how our characters come out the other side of that is, again, whether or not it works. Like, one of the things that they did that, no, I don't really want to talk about that too much. So, you know, I just appreciated Season 6. And again, you know, feel a little, like, worried about where it ended, but not, like, drastically worried, just a little more of a concern, I suppose. Waiting to still see what Season 7 does, because, yeah, just a little more precarious. Let's see, Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, Episode 2. You know, I guess entertaining stuff. I feel like similar along the lines of the first episode. It feels like it's been so long since I saw it, though. There are little bits here and there, and it's definitely something, you Yeah, I don't know. I remember generally favorite impression about it, but I guess I don't remember the details too well. Kamikatsu, Working for God in a Godless World, episode 4. Actually very funny, although the more you watch it, the more you're like, yeah, the editing for this is a little cracked sometimes. Maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way, I don't know. And it kind of works okay, just because there's a sort of manic energy always bubbling under the surface, which kind of makes the occasional bad editing either completely intentional or maybe not that bad because it just kind of happens to mesh with the energy of the show. But it's overall been entertaining, interesting, I'd say pretty decent episode 4. Konosuba, An Explosion on This Wonderful World, episode 2. Amusing. Definitely not Konosuba's normal gut-bustingly, absurdly funny stuff, which is kind of hard to do. It doesn't have the range of characters that would need to do something like that. Maybe it's not exactly trying to be that. But overall, you know, I guess entertaining. I'm just trying to think. I mean, I guess of those three I just mentioned, it's probably one I'm not as looking forward to. Maybe it kind of, it's kind of entertaining to watch when it's on. And I don't necessarily feel like I have to put off watching it, although it helps that it's dubbed, so I can usually do that a little more backgroundy, but whatever. Blah, 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 blah. The Legendary Hero is Dead, episode 4. What happened in this one? Stuff. It continues to be the series that it is. Maybe something that people enjoy. I kind of feel like if you haven't been enjoying it up to episode 3, I'm not sure that it's necessarily giving you anything too much better. Maybe ever so slightly better with episode 4, with making it seem like our main character just isn't some completely irredeemable but somehow narratively lucky. You know, maybe there is a little bit more to him, and unfortunately the series isn't taking out his unique charm. It isn't pulling out his unique charms in a way that I feel like keeps people. And I think the rating for that one is also kind of dropping down into the territory, which is about right. Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Season 4, episode 13. If there's any big criticism about this episode, it's that we already need the next episode. This is good material. The pacing isn't bad, but it's one of those things where I kind of feel like this would be better binge watched. And this isn't the only thing. I'm just wondering if the numbers here are correct or not. This isn't the only thing this season that would actually be like that. I know I was thinking about that regarding something else, and I'm just going to double check something while I'm at this just to make sure. But I think the previous episode kind of dealt with mostly with most of the stuff that the party was dealing with, and not necessarily our main character, who's been separated from them. And this one kind of gave it the other way, although there's still a bit going on there, because, you know, there's a lot of very intense and very thought-provoking stuff going on in here. Okay. Yeah, I guess my notes were right. So hard to remember all this stuff. But, yeah. Overall, I guess, you know, I really wish I was watching the next episode. Dr. Stone, Season 3, Episode 2. And that's what I was wondering, you know, because I'm like, did I watch Episode 2? Did I watch Episode 3 and just forget to update the thing? But no, it was Episode 2. Already all these episodes are blurring together, but, you know, Dr. Stone still being very interesting. What did they specifically cover? I think that happened. More Dr. Stone goodness. Sorry, I'm yawning. Let's see. My One-Hit Kill Sister, Episode 4. If there's any problem with the series, it just kind of... It has a gimmick that it plays with, but doesn't really feel like it has anything it's doing with it. It's not horrible, but it is sort of just kind of treading a little bit in place. Not horrible, just kind of. There's better better series, like Mashley, Magic and Muscles, or Mashal. Like, I think that's supposed to be a combination of magic and muscle. Mashal, magic, Mashal. Episode 4. Let's see, continuation of that. Because that was entertaining, and then that encounter was interesting and entertaining. I get the impression it's still introducing important characters. I guess it's not necessarily... I think it's kind of exploring some of its themes, and it is kind of making progression. In terms of, it has established an idea, and it's doing stuff with it, and overall it's, it's entertaining. I don't think it's so heavily dependent on the main character being an inexplicably complete idiot. They just kind of have it as a thing, but they haven't been wearing things down by, like, having him, like, forget absolutely every obvious thing ever at all times. It's just more like he's off in his own world, and then they just make sure it's just entertaining in different ways when it does happen. So, continuing to be pretty good. Rokudo's Bad Girls, Episode 4. Okay, I guess. I kind of didn't like the new girl, but then again, she thinks herself a good person, but she's kind of doesn't really care about people, and so she's really just a fucking animal. Which I guess is why she's a bad girl, even though she kind of acts like she might be a good girl. The show, I think, is thus kind of indirectly acknowledging it, but at the same time, it just sort of is. Maybe like which other show? One of the other ones I was talking about. I don't know, there's a couple of them where it's probably still just introducing characters. Oh, duh, it was the previous one. Mashley was probably still introducing major characters. Although, I'm not quite sure what this show has long-term planned for it. Like, it kind of started showing that a little bit previously, and maybe that's some of the right idea, but I don't know. I guess it's just mostly running with its theme, which is okay. Maybe it just means it doesn't completely feel fulfilling. Too Cute Crisis, Episode 4. The show continuing to be stupid in its wrong way, but just kind of entertaining in its stupidness. The really unfortunate thing is that for it being a show about these animals, especially about cats are kind of at the forefront of it. It doesn't, like, pretend that dogs aren't cute or anything like that. It's surprising how much it doesn't really seem to understand cats. Now, that's not to say that it is... Like, when the characters are talking to the aliens about how you're supposed to interact with cats, there is a large degree of truth, I think, to what they're saying, but there's also a degree to it which is just like, some of what they say is really neither here nor... It's not right, because it ignores the fact that, while a lot of cats do behave that way, sometimes it's about reading the temperament of a cat. Like, when I think about what I would have to do if I just saw a new cat and that new cat just wasn't immediately hiding, and I'm like, hey, maybe I want to see if I'm going to interact with this cat. I know there's a degree of me interacting with it, reading its temperament, and kind of seeing, okay, how much does it want to? Whereas this show would have you think that you don't even read the temperaments. Instead, you just kind of sit there and wait for the cat to make a decision. Which... Again, that really depends on the cat's temperament. And it's just kind of weird to have a show that's supposed to be about animals that kind of doesn't get them. But then again, they kind of make communicating with them this big deal, and so it's like they're not communicating very complicated thoughts. It's like, okay, yeah, it's very easy for us to not know what's going on in their head, because if they're meowing because they want something, it's not always obvious looking at their head what they want. And at the same time, though, you have a 95% certainty. Like, even if a cat's asking for you to get put food in its bowl, it might not be doing it because it's hungry, but rather that's its way of making sure it's maintaining control of the environment around it to a certain degree. As an example, it's like, I don't know. This episode made me think about it a lot more because it was strongly about communication, and I don't know. But it had other funny elements to this, including, you know, elements unique to the show. And so it's entertaining. But I kind of suspect if you're really good at interacting with cats, it's probably it's a little miffing, I guess. Let's see. Next up, Hell's Paradise, Episode 5. Series continuing to be pretty excellent and interesting. What'll happen in there? Yeah. I'm not sure what to talk about, though, just because it feels like a good continuing narrative, and this might be a good show to binge watch when it comes out, but it's entertaining and enticing enough where you can keep watching it and want to see more without feeling like, oh, I have to see what immediately happened after this. You kind of want to watch the next episode, but you can put that one a little bit on the back burner. Now, Summoned to Another World for a Second Time, Episode 4. This was probably the show I was thinking, this one would probably be a lot better if it was binge-watched. And this one, it's because it kind of has this problem where, okay, the idea is our main character he's gone back to this world, he has his OP, he was the hero of the previous time stats, but he's revisiting a lot of the ideas from when he originally did it, and it's not really about, it's not playing as strongly to the, oh, it's him returned, as it really should. Like, even with this episode where it's like, okay, there was a character that had been wanting to see him and wondered where he'd been the last 5 years, that wasn't played as strongly as it really should have been. It could have been no different if he had the final encounter, and instead of returning back to the world and being Isakai the second time, you know, what if he was just injured laying low for 5 years, and only as he recovered and came out of a hermit mode or something like that, it was like that. And that's the thing. It's not playing with the mechanism of, oh, he isekai'd a second time. And it's not bad, but I think it'd be better if you weren't sitting there thinking about how little you got from each episode. Maybe little you got is kind of overplaying how bad it is. It's more just like, it's sort of there, it's kind of neat stuff, but I feel like maybe it's not playing around with its own premise enough to keep appreciating or build up on the appreciation by watching one episode, waiting a week, watching another episode, waiting a week. To a certain degree, I'm kind of like, I guess there's a direction it's going, it's just not, I'm just not sure if that direction it's going feels relevant to the fact that the original premise exists. I guess you could kind of think of it like reincarnated as a sword. If our main character reincarnated as a sword, but he was just a standalone party member who happened to also be a sword, I don't think it'd be as good as it was. It as a show, as a counterexample, really established the fact that he's a sword, and the story isn't just about him, it's about him and the person that is his sword wielder, and their interaction with each other and their discovery and learning of things, and so that works because it's tied to the central premise. You know, he's coming in there with a degree of understanding of the way things should be, but not quite sure the exact details of the way things actually are, and etc., etc. So, you know, he's not some perfect godlike thing, but again, it's the fact that he's reincarnated as a sword in another world are all three things that remain kind of prominent and notable through the entire thing. Let's see, The Aristocrats' Otherworldly Adventure, Serving Gods Who Go Too Far, Episode 5. Entertaining, but, you know, as we're going, it's sort of like I think the good example of why this show is miffing me is because it's also not really playing with its concepts. Well, that and the world feels a little catered to our main character. It's very not Jane Doe-ish, Mary Sue-ish in a way where it's like, even though it's a show that kind of defines its own premise, it feels a little too catered to our main character and not really exploring kind of its premise. So like, an example of something that would be really interesting for this show to do is if instead of he goes to a place, oh, the king and his advisor and their daughters are always fawning over him for like 3 episodes in a row now? 2 episodes in a row? I don't know. Like, if instead of that being kind of its major thing, it established that all the gods gave him a 10 and everything, and 5 was theoretically the best possible. Well, what if, like, every other episode it was about explicitly exploring what does it mean that he was given a 10 by this one god? Or, alternatively, it had an actual end goal and it was kind of working towards it. So, like, it's doing something similar to In Another World with My Smartphone, and that's like, well, we're kind of introducing, I guess, more characters. Like, I think the next episode is going to introduce another character from the opening, I think. So, in theory, we're going to be introduced to another character that's important to it, but it feels like while that would be interesting, it's I don't know what it's doing to get up to there, and that will be in episode 6. It's like halfway through. It's introducing characters, and while our main character is awesome, they keep taking a break from that in order to do these other things. Like, maybe they could have mentioned that maybe the king normally would be like enforcing certain rules, but maybe it's the effects of one of the gods that are causing the king to be unable to be a silly Billy or something like that. You know, it's missing a little something. It's not unwatchable, but you know, it's something where I guess I keep watching it and I'm expecting it to... That was the one I was thinking of. Okay, yeah. I'm just watching it and I guess just kind of seeing events go by without any real direction. But yeah, like I mentioned, we have In Another World with My Smartphone, Season 2, Episode 5. You know, that one's kind of also a little bit laid back with some of its stuff. It has conflicts that happen, but for the most part, you know, it's about like, oh yes, our main character is building up. You know, it's already kind of lampshaded the fact that it has a specific size of the harem in mind, and it has established that there is some big event happening that's going to be notable that I think they have to handle. But, you know, I'd say it's definitely handling it better than the Aristocrats' Otherworldly Adventure. Mostly because I think it's handling some of that stuff better. Now, there's definitely a similar spirit where it's just like, some of these rules feel like they are a little more relaxed for it, but nowhere near as bad as Otherworldly. So I'm enjoying it in this episode. You know, it's kind of neat. Kind of okay. It's like, okay, yeah, you're going to move forward on some of these things that you suggested are actually things that move forward in this show, and I'm curious to see what you're going to do with that. So, I appreciate that. I got a cheat skill in Another World and became unrivaled in the real world, too. Episode 5. And this was a show I was thinking, this show would be really good binged. It's good enough not binged to be interesting to watch episode by episode, but I guess the problem is, like, it's episode 5, and there's still not really a direction of this show. It's sort of meandering as well. A similar problem that I was just talking about. But it doesn't feel like the rules are bent over backwards for our main character too much. Like, there's definitely a lot there, but with the
fundamental premise being that they've been bent in that way, they're at least working because our main character... It doesn't feel like the universe was just designed to be around him. It does feel like he was given something OP in this Isakai world that is also making him OP in the real world. And his OP in the real world is mostly just in kind of being, a good-looking guy that turns heads, and he definitely has some better physical abilities, but they haven't, super explored it all. I mentioned the previous episode had a moment. This one also had a moment. And to a certain degree, that's why I wonder if this one would be better binged, because it is definitely spoon-feeding you the right sort of stuff. It just feels like it's stretched out a little bit more over time. But it doesn't feel like it's padded with wasted time, per se. It's just more socially sort of stuff, as opposed to isekai-y, adventure-y sort of stuff. So, and this is something I was thinking the last episode, but this episode I was thinking more. It's like, they really do like drawing these pretty girls and just staying zoomed in on their faces a whole lot, don't they? And it looks actually really nice. It's an art style that's... I don't feel like you see in a lot of animated stuff. I'm not sure if anything else immediately jumps to mind as, oh yes, I've seen this other anime do this. So it is kind of neat to see them drawing the characters on the screen, and I feel it's worth showing off. And it's usually not completely pointless from the interactions going on and the story going on. It's just a little bit... I think we're supposed to be a little bit in awe of the stuff we're seeing, which I think to a certain degree we are. But the weakness of the show is that when it comes to getting fed the stuff that actually built it together, I feel like if this show were binge-watched, it would probably be ridiculously spectacular. Whereas right now, it's pretty good. And if its rating is high, I don't remember what its rating, but if its rating is staying high, it's probably because even if there are these problems with it, I do think people can probably just watch it episode by episode. It's good stuff. Why Rileyana ended up at the Duke's Mansion, episode 4. For being a little iffy about whether or not I wanted to watch shoujo sort of stuff, this show's continuing to be pretty good. I'm having trouble putting my finger on exactly why, and I guess it's because it hasn't gotten too lost in the shoujo tropes, so to speak. Which is to say that, the shoujo tropes are there guiding it, but it's... I don't know. It's hard. I'm trying to think, especially since I just watched episode 4 this morning, yesterday morning. I guess it's technically past midnight now. It's hard to say exactly why I'm like, I feel like I can keep watching this because it continues to be kind of interesting. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's doing a good job. If there's anything to comment about this episode, I'm not quite sure what I think about the ending, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. But otherwise, some of the conversations are definitely interesting. And then next up we have a Dead Mount Death Play, and that's continuing to be interesting. Again, if there's any problem with that one, it's that I think watching it feel like we want it to be a little bit faster. But ultimately, I'd say it's pretty good for what it is doing. It's doing some interesting and entertaining things. So, for example, our main character is like, becoming rich in this world won't be a problem. All I need is rare jewels. Oh, it turned out in the Isakai world that they came from, those jewels were very common. Even kids could afford them on a kid's allowance. So, there's that entertaining play around with stuff, this entertaining dynamic going on with our main characters and other, I'm not quite sure how to put it all. There's a kind of... We're waiting to see what's going to happen because the show is staying on this edge where we want to know what the main character is going to do next, especially with all this stuff being set up. It's It's very interesting. And the companion they set up with him to be next to him, it's interesting because you're kind of left guessing what she's going to do as well. And then the other guy, you know, they're exploring him a bit more. And he's not a bad person to have in place. But I almost wonder if he kind of really works out well for the show as a sort of straight man to a certain degree. Like, if you don't know what I mean by a straight man, sometimes you have, like, in a comedy set, usually you could have a comedy person and a straight person. And the purpose of a straight person is kind of be that contrast to the other thing going on. And while it doesn't have to be a comedy, like for a show like this, our main character is basically a necromancer in some sort of slightly technologically more advanced Japan. Slightly. Nothing that's like good, but it feels a little cyberpunky. Just a little bit. But, you know, in order to properly contrast that, you kind of need somebody else to bounce that off of, to give thoughts or discussions or a sort of grounding in reality. And I do feel like that guy does a good job of maybe doing that. Now, granted, it's not the most spectacular thing sometimes. I mean, you can have really awesome straight guys like a Hyun from The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. But for this one, I think he's not that over the top. Some people are probably like, oh yes, I really like him, I like this aesthetic and this stuff. But to be fair, the main character and, again, the girl that's a part of the thing, they do a pretty good job of having your attention a little more drawn. But, you know, overall, good stuff. So, that's all the anime I watched, I think. Nothing else is coming to mind. And my head has been hurting all night, so I should probably not stay on here talking too much longer. Because what is there to say about video games? Tears of the Kingdom comes out soonish. I did pre-order it. We'll see when my copy arrives. Maybe I'll have the time to play it because I'm probably wound down on my Animal Crossing, and my Pokemoning is staying pretty chillaxed. I caught Inteleon. It wasn't that hard, mostly because he only had special attacks and no real boosting moves. So that basically means that since I have 2 games, fire up my max special sponge Blissey, who also throws up light screen to make it where everybody else takes less damage from special attacks. And it heals and helping hands and whatever. And then you just really need something to go on the offense. In this case, I just selected our good old friend, Monkey. I'm, Annihilate. There we go. I was completely blanking on the name. So, those 2 combinations work fine. Annihilate isn't like a counter to Inteleon in any way, shape, or form. They are just, if you have nothing else, use them for your damage output. You know, if you can keep them alive, damage output. Even if they die, as long as they don't die too much, they're good damage output. So, pretty easy to catch the Inteleon. Beyond that, yeah, I guess I don't have much more to comment on. Oh, we did have Alien Day this past week, and we didn't get an announcement for a Dead by Daylight Alien chapter, which I'm kind of glad for, because I'm not sure if Xenomorph can be done right in Dead by Daylight. I've been saying this in a lot of places. The big problem being that Xenomorph, as a video game character, has just been done so well in other games that I don't think behavior can really do anything with the creature without it being woefully inadequate compared to the others. So, for example, when it comes to controlling it, you go back to the original Alien vs. Predator, and you know it was pretty fun to play as the Xenomorph. And you definitely don't want to play around like that in Dead by Daylight. That would be overkill for the players. But on the other side, if you want, okay, well, what about just Xenomorph, not maybe moving around like that, but being frightening as hell. Well, that's where Alien Isolation comes into play, and how the fuck can you do that? That was just such an awesomely scary depiction of the xenomorph. In order to be able to do something like that in Dead by Daylight, again, you'd have to break the game, which you can't really do. So, what can behavior do? I'm not sure. Maybe I've got some vague ideas of something that might kind of work, but there's still other things they need to do in order to make it work. Sorry. Overall, I don't know. It's interesting because the supposed leaks of what would happen on Alien Day sounded like they were pretty accurate for everything except the Dead by Daylight chapter. And I say pretty accurate, not as in like it got everything exactly right, but more like everything that was going to be announced was announced except that. The only things that changed for the other things was pretty much timing of stuff. And that's not too bad. Now, granted, somebody else also pointed that some of that information might have already been known in advance, knowable by other sources. And so, yeah, if somebody were to put together a fake thing, you know, they could just be a little off on timelines, but then sneak in one thing that just wasn't there. And that's fair. But, you know, it's still one of the things where if Xenomorph does end up in Dead by Daylight, I keep saying Dead by Daylight. I do hope I'm proven wrong. But otherwise, you know, my focus right now is to just kind of keep up on the current rift, continue leveling up the characters I have right now. I have 22 out of the 31. Is 31 the right number? I think it's 31 killers and 36 survivors. I have 22 of the 31 killers with absolutely all the perks. You know, it's going slow but steady. I can't really tell you how quickly it takes me to do that, but, you know, it's surprisingly quick given that I'm not doing things to get extra blood points other than daily challenges. Otherwise, you know, I'm just kind of playing it normally. I'm not even bringing blood point offerings. I'm just doing the stuff. Occasionally grabbing a tome challenge when I complete it, but for the most part I'm trying to save those up, especially since you know, the next chapter is probably being announced sometime this month, and around when that happens, well, I guess even before that happens, when that chapter comes out, I do want as many challenges saved up in the tomes as I can, just for a boost of blood points when the new killer and or survivor and or killers and or survivors, you know, whatever they release, whenever that comes out, I want to make sure I'm ready. I want to stay on top of this thing I've got going where everybody's got all their perks. My goal is to make that something that I could maintain in the future if I really wanted to. I don't know, I might stop before I finish doing that, but it's one of the ways you grind Dead by Daylight and continue playing it. It's entertaining. Anyways, I feel like I've mumbled a little bit, especially since, you know, like I said, the head's a little achy. So let's go ahead and wrap that up. Hopefully it was an entertaining video for y'all, and y'all have a nice week.